My name is Rob, or Robert Mitchell. I live currently in Easton in Bristol. Been in Bristol for about 30 years. Came from London before that. I left at 19 to come and study. I came as a student to Bristol in 89 to study theatre, film and television. I've been doing media and community work for a lot of that time since. I was in London for 11 years. Prior to that, I was in Barbados with my paternal grandmother from 11 months to about 2 weeks to make it, says my Bajan grandmother. And I was born in Hertfordshire, and I was shipped off from there, or planed off from there by courier at 11 months old. My sister was sent at 13 months old. My sister has the same birthday as me. She's 2 years older, but we have the same birthday. And she was sent at 13 months back to Barbados also to live with our dad's mum. So I lived there for almost 8 years. She lived there for almost 10 years. Well, I grew up, as far as I can remember, in two places. Barbados till I was 8 and East London till I was 19. So I guess the first part of that was primary schooling, living with my Seventh-day Adventist grandmother, living in Paris Gap off Westbury Road in Bridgetown, Barbados, which is actually lived one street away from where Rihanna grew up, but she's a whole generation younger than me, so I didn't know her at all. But I know now her street's called Rihanna Drive. It used to be called Paris Gap, another Paris Gap, like first Paris Gap, second Paris Gap, third Paris Gap. But I think it's her second Paris Gap is now called Rihanna Drive or something like that. But no, I didn't know her. I grew up with my sister, who, like I said, 2 years older, but same birthday, which meant we didn't, everything had to be shared. In fact, everything had to be shared between my sister and I, even birthdays. I couldn't get a Christmas present or a present if my sister didn't get one, which I think that influenced me. So I have two children as well. One's 26 and the other's 23, 24 quite soon. And I think had similar kind of thing where you get the sense that everything had to be fairly distributed. You couldn't give one person something without the other. If not, nobody got. That's how we grew up. My grandmother was a strict Seventh-day Adventist, not all of her life, but certainly the time when we were there. She died in 2009. She was born in 1920. Her name was Vera Hoyt, although her maiden name was Mitchell, which is where I get my name from, which is where my dad had his mum's maiden name. Like a lot of Caribbean people where father is not around. So his father, my grandfather, was a tailor, and he'd gone off to America, and he had two kids out there as well. My aunts, one of them had the same name as my sister, Arlene, and another aunt called Monica. And also he had a sister as well in Barbados. She died earlier. She had polio, Aunt Sybil. So I grew up with her. So I grew up in Barbados with my sister, my aunt, my grandmother, and a mongrel dog called Rose, which lived under the house because dogs didn't really live inside the house and run about the sofas and stuff in the Caribbean. I went to Wesley Hall Junior School. I went to Westbury Infant School. Wesley Hall was a famous Barbados cricketer. A lot of Barbados was influenced by cricket and cricketers and that kind of thing. School, I remember being strict. One of the things about Barbados, though, they pride themselves on speaking better English than the English, apparently. So apart from the accent, we're going along something like this, the talk so, but the actual English is they aspire to good English. Being a speaker of English as a first language as well did help, I think, when coming back to England, because then you don't have that linguistic transition. I think that can be beneficial as well. If you're young and you speak more than one language, I think that's good for your brain, good for your understanding. But at the same time, it could be a disadvantage because you could be disadvantaged by the fact you can't access the work. In school days, I think I liked spelling. I was quite clever, relatively speaking, in relation to my peers. I always remember competing with one of the girls in my class, I think Gail or something like that, who was the clever ones. There was always, as far as I was concerned, some competition between us. A good competition, a healthy competition. And what else did we do? Went to church on a Saturday. Didn't go out very far or very much. I mean, we played on the street. There was Mr. Knight across the road. He was a shopkeeper. We called him Dada, or Dada, I guess. We called our grandmother Mama. And even though he wasn't our granddad, we called him Dada. And my parents, my grandmother didn't have a relationship or anything like that. He was like the elder man in our lives when we were young, who kind of looked after us, and always remembered him. Charles Knight, his name was. Charles Knight, Mr. Knight. And I guess he was some sort of, when I reflect upon him, I think he was probably some part white or something because of the way his hair was and everything. We spoke to our parents on the phone and we wrote letters to them. I don't remember how much we were told about them, but I guess we had our own imaginings about what they maybe like. But also So with a sense of what they were like because we spoke to them. I don't remember longing to come to them. I don't remember longing for England or anything like that. I remember when we came and my grandmother left and we didn't know we were staying. I remember I was like, oh, okay. I don't remember being traumatized or anything because I think that trauma must have happened at 11 months old. So I think a lot of the stuff for me would have been that first transition, which I don't have any memory of at 11 months old. So you, as a kid, you're born, there's these two people in your life, maybe more. I was born in Hitchin, Hertfordshire. So there'd also been my aunt, Auntie Kat, who's still alive. She was born in 1930. Her birthday is 30th of June 1930. She's in her 90s now. She's still in Hitchin. And that's the reason I was born in Hitchin, in Hertfordshire. So we'd have had a few people around, and Uncle Orwell, who is my mum's biological uncle. So Auntie Kat, Auntie Monica, is wife to Uncle Orwell. So I would have had that life. But then, and I wouldn't have known my sister because she would have already been sent away. She was sent away at 13 months. So actually I would have also have met my sister when I went to Barbados, when I got sent to Barbados in 1971. Yeah, so I would also have just met my sister, just met my grandmother, and I don't remember any of that. So my first memories are like playing with a Matchbox car, literally Matchbox, not Matchbox as in the brand name, but literally Matchbox. Our dog Rose, going to church. But I don't remember what we were told about our parents. I think we had certain expectations that they could solve anything. Like they could resolve this idea that I guess they could make things happen. But I don't remember wanting much either, apart from really wanting a plane that flew by itself. That's the only thing I probably asked for. A plane that flew by itself. That's the main thing. And I remember also, speaking of white, there was a girl in my school. Her name was Shelley Curtin. And it wasn't until after I came back in England and reflected many years that I thought she must have been white. Because at the time we didn't know about race. Everyone was black, innit? Police were black, Prime Minister was black, or whatever. Everybody was black. So you weren't really, at that age as well, you're not really aware of race. So race didn't come a thing. When I do talk sometimes, I say I wasn't born black. And they look at me funny. But yeah, I wasn't born black because black is a political concept. So you're born however you're born and then you become relative to your political context, really. So I discovered I was black when I came back to England, 7 or 8 years old, in primary school in East London, Monica Junior School. Then I went to Creedon for a while. And it was there, you know, when you hear like WOG and all this, and like you don't know what these terms mean, but you discover soon enough. The school I went to when I came back to England was quite mixed, a good fair amount of white, black, Asian at the time. I think if you go now to East London, you find there's not many white people around as much, unless they're Polish or Ukrainian, I guess. But definitely at the time there was a good third white, third Asian, third black. So when I discovered the racism, I guess it also wasn't very personal. I do work these days with children who live in very, very white contexts. They might be the only black mixed, say, child in their family or something, and that can be quite traumatizing sometimes. But certainly when I came back and discovered racism and got into racism, you just couldn't take it personally because it's there are other kids getting it. Whereas I think if I'd come back to somewhere where I was the only black kid, that probably would have been very, very traumatizing. Sometimes we played football in primary school, blacks v whites, and just as a quick way to pick a team, and they were quite popular games at lunchtimes. Big scrumming around. But yeah, we're all friends still, do you know what I mean? Yeah, so I was born in Hertfordshire, 1970, and sent back to Barbados, 11 months old. And I didn't realise till later, but I remember there was a picture, I think my sister might still have it as part of the family album, with a plane and a white air hostess with a baby in her arms. I think that's me. So literally I was couriered back because my parents didn't come back to bring me. No one came back to bring me. I guess my sister would have been the same. So we were literally couriered back. Now, I don't remember any of that, but I do wonder what it was like on the plane and all that at the time. I just wonder what it was like. I remember, I think it's quite tough if you're less than a year to be separated from your parents, because I loved my mum and dad apparently. I used to cry a lot so my dad went to work. I was very upset about my dad going to work, and that used to upset me a lot. I think my mum was not really that keen on bringing up little children. I think she's very impatient with little children. They both passed away now. They both passed away in 2015, 7 days apart in Barbados. She was from Dominica, he was from Barbados. So my Dominican family, well, a lot of them are in Barbados. I've got a few cousins, actually, I had cousins hanging out with as well when I was growing up in Barbados. So my mum has two sisters from Dominique, born in Dominica, who lived all their lives in Barbados, got Barbadian partners and Barbadian children. In terms of not coming with your mum and dad, we spoke to mum and dad on the phone from time to time. How you getting on at school? Actually, that's what my grandmother used to say when she spoke to her afterwards. It was always a question. How you getting on at school was always a question for a kid. They'd send us things from time to time. We'd write letters to them asking them for things. My mum once complained about that much later. She said, all you ever did was write and ask for things. Well, we were just doing what we were told in a sense, or what we understood. But I think the problem for her is the problem that you have as a parent. If you can't provide all the things your child is asking for, it can make you upset and angry because you'd like to do it, but you can't. So that's probably what that came from. My parents came to Barbados, I don't know which year, but I want to say around 1975, when I was about 5, and maybe a few years before we came back here. So I didn't really know them at all apart from the phone. And I think I got to know them later, but I didn't really know them. But also you don't necessarily miss them as far as you're aware, because you don't know them. You don't know, you're just growing up where you're growing up. You know you have a mum and dad, you know you speak to them. You know this is your grandmother. You know, it's not like you're some secret adopted child or anything like that. You know, you kind of have a sense of these people around you. But as a small child, you just take it in your stride. It is what it is. So, and I think that it was interesting also that when we came back, we weren't told actually that we were staying. So I didn't say goodbye to anybody that I knew from Barbados at the time. One summer, we just disappeared. So I remember, my grandmother was ready to shoot. So my grandmother brought us back. She came, it was the first time, probably the last time she went on a plane. She came with us, brought us. Her sister was here as well, Aunt Dol, Olga. So that was the only other one of my dad's aunts who ended up in England. I think it was in my dad's side of the family. We are the only one who ended up in England. A lot of them, the rest of them in America. They're in America. But my dad's family, my dad's mum is the one we grew up with, but she had some sisters. I only knew one, that was Aunt Dol, Olga, who died around 2020 in England, only one in England. But then there were others, so I'm told. My cousin Marcia is very good at filling out the gaps here. There were others who grew up in Cuba. In fact, Aunt Dol was born in Cuba. And as far as I can tell, this family story, as far as I can tell, is that actually my grandmother's mother could have been assassinated, as it were. Let's say assassinated, that sounds big, doesn't it? But a hitman was put on her because she was having this relationship with a white guy, quote unquote white guy. In the Caribbean, white doesn't necessarily mean white as we know it. You might be mixed, you might be Asian, you might be Moroccan, you might be all sorts of possibilities, but you'd be called white if you were like dark. But anyway, my great grandmother was having a relationship. She had one child, Goldie, who I never met. The second child was my grandmother. And before she'd had another child with this guy, the guy's mum, the name was Allenby, set a hitman to take out my great grandmother. But apparently the hitman was quite fond of my great grandmother's mum, my great great grandmother, and he didn't really want to take her out. So they said, look, I'm supposed to do this, but if you just sent her away, then I can go claim my money and we say job done, because all the woman wants to do is stop this thing happening. So that's what happened. So the rest of my grandmother's siblings were born in Cuba. Don't know why they went to Cuba. They went to Cuba. But in terms of family, I guess I had friends. I had neighbours. We had Miss Night. I had my sister. My grandmother was very loving, very tactile, very Christian. She was very harsh. My grandmother was very strict. Quite a disciplinarian. You know, she would beat as well if you did something bad. She wouldn't hesitate about beating you. But that was love in those days, wasn't it? I think in England, we still got beats, but definitely in England, English culture is less about beating, partly because the laws come in to stop kids being beaten. But Caribbean life, you get licks hard. So I guess we knew how to behave ourselves. Church, did a lot in church. I remember beautiful flowers, na, 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 na. I don't know what the song is, that's all I remember. I remember singing a performance. I remember recitations. I did recitations, because I could read well. In fact, I was told, once again, my cousin Marcia, who filled a lot of gaps for me, said that because I used to enjoy reading, I used to apparently always walk around with a book with me of some sort. And then when my grandmother took me into school, as I'm saying this, actually, I'm thinking about Roy Hackett. Roy Hackett had a very similar story, identical story. So I just stop and think to myself, I'm not blowing my memory with his, but I'm not. My grandmother took me into school, and I think I was reading something. I think they just get a sense of your levels. But I was reading something, and I'd had this book with me, and I was reading it. But the teacher didn't believe I was reading it. So they had to go get another, because they thought I must have memorized it because I had it with me. And they had to go and get another book to test if I was actually reading. And it turned out I was actually reading. And this would have been, so I was reading from about 4 or something like that. I don't know what level of reading, but reading. So I've always enjoyed words and reading. In fact, I do spoken word these days. I've always enjoyed words. Also, I think, like I said, the fact that Barbadians speak English made that transition to England a lot easier on that level, to be able to have that continuity. So what else as a kid? What else do I remember as a kid? I remember bicycle tires that we used to flick with a stick to keep them rolling. That was our toys. I remember those little match boxes. I used to half open them, imagine they were trucks, and drive them around the window. So I remember that. And what else do I remember? I remember once falling in a dirty puddle in school and having the embarrassment of having to take all my clothes off and then having newspaper wrapped around me as some sort of skirt thing that I was taking home in. I remember that. I remember I went to spend some time in Dominica as well. So my mum was from Dominica, and while we grew up in Barbados, I remember going to Dominica for a bit. Now I did remember having a few memories of that. My brother, I have a half brother as well, my mum's son, who lives in the States. I remember him telling me that when I went to Dominica, that when it was time to go back, I didn't want to go back because I loved it so much. And I can get that. I love the spirit. I love the energy of Dominica. So, but I couldn't tell you how long I was there, but according to him, I was there for a lot longer than my sister say. I remember getting my foot caught in a spoke. I remember bathing in the rain as it ran off the roof. I remember sliding down the muddy banana plantation hills that my maternal granddad had. And we'd get these palm leaves and use them as sleds to slide down in the mud. I remember those things from Dominica. I would have first met my mum after being sent away to Barbados 11 months when they came to Barbados in the mid-70s. I'm not sure why they came or how long they came for. I'm not sure exactly when they came, but it would have been probably a year or a few before we came back to England. What do I remember about my mum? I don't remember the specifics of meeting my mum in the 70s in Barbados. I remember they were strangers to us. I remember there was that. So, when you relate to a stranger, there's always that kind of level of politeness or distance or discomfort you have. I guess there would have been that. I remember my mum, when we were younger, she was very impatient, my mum. So she was very, it's very difficult to, I guess, as a kid, develop a full relationship with that impatience. But that was her. She was like a different person when she was older, much cuter later. When we were older, just really, really cute later. But as kids, I don't think she was good little kids. Because even my half-brother, she would have had him when she was super young. And, he was brought up by his aunts, almost like a sibling to them, even though he was a nephew to them. And my mum came away from Dominica to England, and left him there. He's a very bitter individual. I'm sure that some of it's got to do with that. But I haven't had his story, really. We don't really talk these days. But we did occasionally. I know my sister's very resentful of my mum, even still, even though they've passed. And the specifics of that resentment, she probably wouldn't even be saying this much, but they have to go into it. I know that it was definitely about getting to know them, because as a small child, 7 years old or whatever, you know the world around you, you know who's who, you know what you can do, you know what limits and boundaries are. But meeting our parents when we came back to England was a journey of discovery. What's the limits of this personality? What's the boundaries you can push? I guess we were well enough brought up, but obviously as kids you do all sorts of naughty things, don't you, as part of your discovery. But the main thing I remember my mum about was impatience, her being quite impatient, with and intolerant about certain things, really. But she did try. They tried, and my dad worked for the post office, my mum worked for the hospital, and as a telephonist. And then they tried to give us what they could and the rest of it, but definitely there was a sense of lack always as well. Can't afford this, can't afford that. They were buying into it. They had a house, and I guess they were paying the mortgage and all that as well. Because when we first moved, we moved to Manor Park in East London, and that was rented accommodation. I remember Mum always complaining about the fact that she needed to have her own house so that people wouldn't be telling her what to do or expectations about this or that. So definitely they wanted some security by having their own house. So that's the house my sister lives in now in London. And what else could I remember about them? I don't remember my dad being very tactile. My dad was super quiet. He never said hardly anything, really. The odd moan here and there. But he'd get on with it, just did his thing. Enjoyed the horse racing, and he was a big cricket fan. But yeah, the main thing I remember was it was a journey of discovery because we didn't know who they were. So we had to be like on a level of politeness. So when we came back to the UK, yeah, life was quite different. It wasn't as open. We had to spend more time in the house. We didn't spend lots of time running on the street in Barbados, but it was definitely more of a sense of openness. The veranda to the street, the people, it was more sense of openness. But we spent a lot of time in the house then too. But I remember England being quite dark in that respect because curtains are closed and you're in the house, keeping away from cold and from dangers or whatever. We had school to deal with as well. School forms a major part of your memories and identity because that's how you learn who you are from other children. They tell you who you are, don't they? So with my parents, I don't know. I bonded with my mother later, full adulthood. She always loved us, I'm sure. She always tried, I'm sure. But like I said, the main outstanding emotion I can remember from my mum is impatience. She wasn't, you didn't get lovely, cuddly. There was none of that going on, really. My grandmother was very cuddly, very tactile. I remember sitting on her lap lots. I remember that. But actually, that was completely lost when we came back. And then he couldn't sit with my dad, for example. He'd kind of, get off. You know what I mean? There was a sense of rejection there from my dad. I mean, that's probably just his personality, really, to be fair. And mum, similarly, definitely no hugs or anything from my mum. So, yeah, we didn't have any of that. So, in fact, I've never really thought about that before, but that's definitely a thing. Because my grandmother, very tactile, very touchy-feely, very cuddly, very sit-on-lappy. Probably also makes a difference whether you're 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7. Probably makes a difference whether you're 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7, how sit-on-lappy you can be. But I remember with my kids, it wouldn't, I'm also very cuddly and very tactile. So, they would always be, if they were, I can't imagine ever rejecting them from a hug or something like that. Do you know what I mean? But definitely we got that. I think that probably informs the personalities of them, I guess, in ways that would allow them to send their children off like that. Mum had already rejected 2 children before me. Rejected my brother, her son, not my dad's son, but her son, who she came to England and left there, and they never really reunited. In fact, when they passed away, my brother was quite cussy about her, and he was cussing me at the time, saying, "I'm just like her. Why can't I be more like your dad?" He said to me, which is not his dad, but funny enough. But so he's had this ongoing issue with my mum. I think also, I would say my sister also has some resentment towards mum, but also she spent more time with him. When I went off to university in '89, she was there more with them. So my mum and dad were living in Barbados since 2000, but my mum would come back every so often and stay with my sister and stuff. So she had more time with her. So I know there's some resentment about that. Although I don't know how one can carry on resenting. I think one has to kind of forgive and accept who they are. And also my mum was a very different person in their later life, from my perspective, really. Although I still didn't spend enough time with her, I guess. But yeah, I think the personality, the non-touchy-feely personality, probably hints at something that would allow them to be sent off for years and years. Okay, so my children, I didn't live with their mum for long. It was maybe 2 years or something like that. But they were always there. And their mum, while she wanted to go further afield out of Bristol, she always stayed in Bristol so that we could be close with the kids. So I knew I was always going to see them. So whether I could send them off for years, and especially I don't have the memory myself of what it was like for this 11-month-old child. I don't have the conversation I haven't had the conversation with my mum about what it was like to send her off. I can just surmise. She'd come away from her first child, which she had young. And my sister, who was born 2 years before me, was already sent away back to Barbados when I was born. So the habit was continuous. Obviously, all of this is underpinned with the 5 years notion, i.e., we'll be here for 5 years and then we'll go back. But my mum must have come in 66, something like that. My dad must have come in 60 or 62. The early 60s, mid 60s, they both came. So 5 years was up. But they had kids now. One was from Barbados, one was from Dominica. So where was home going to be? I guess home was always going to be Barbados because that's where she did end up. And also that she had sisters there. And that's where my dad was from. And he always wanted to go back there. But when you come here, you meet someone from another island and you have children. then you're either stuck here or you have to choose an island to go back to, kind of thing. So my mum had her first child in Dominica when she was young, but my sister and I were both born here, and we were both sent back, and that was it. So my mum had 3 children, and my dad 2 children. But I do sort of reflect back and try to read between the lines of the personalities, because I don't know if I could have tolerated this idea of not sending your kids away for years. I mean, even the way my son was born, the circumstances were such that actually there's a possibility that I didn't have to be a part of his life at all. But I couldn't even imagine that. I didn't, for my family, for him, for them, I couldn't imagine that. Because I could very easily have said, because she had a relationship she could have been gotten on with, you know what I mean, and all that kind of stuff. And we weren't together or anything. So it could have easily have been that I was like, oh, I've got a kid and they live over there and I'm getting on with my life. But she did give me a choice if I wanted to be a part of his life. And I couldn't say no to that. So I guess to me, that's the closest I can get to the idea of sending your kids away and not being a part of their lives for many years, let's say. Because I guess when my parents sent us back, they were expecting also at some point to come back. Now, they didn't get back till 2000. So I was 30, my sister was 32, and they'd been here for 40 years. So that was not fitting with their expectations of being here just for 5 years. But I guess in their head, they'd say, oh, look, they can go and live there. We can get on with work. We can both work. We've got childcare issues, but we'll be back there soon. I guess that was the expectation. But obviously that didn't happen, so then they sent for us to come. But yeah, this idea of, there's a piece I wrote called Atlantic Family. And it goes, separation dug a hole for time to inter fertilizer for the soul. The supposedly conquered sea still stretching you and me, Atlantic family. And the idea behind that is the kind of the sea itself as a whole that the globe created and the natural sea, but also that relationship, gulf, ocean that is between us. So I guess it's stretching the extended family idea across the Atlantic, which obviously within the community, East London, wherever, everybody knows that it's absolute great wealth to have extended family, grandparents, uncles, aunts, cousins. And that's a real wealth. That's a genuine wealth. And in the simplest economic terms, it means you don't have to pay for childcare. It means you can work as a parent. But also the other side of it means you get a good rounded upbringing from lots of different perspectives, because parents aren't necessarily the best people to bring up children. So I think the extended family is a wonderful thing, a really rich, enriching thing for any child and for a family generally. But when you try to stretch it across the Atlantic, it becomes problematic. But obviously we were not the only ones. It was very common, not just Caribbean families, I'm sure it happens across lots of families where there's a home, quote unquote, other than England. People will be sent back home for whatever reason. I'd say the worst thing to come out of the experience is I do find it difficult to form committed relationships. I genuinely do. I mean, apart from my children or whatever, because for me, there's always a sense that it's going to end. I remember that in school, that when the teacher got a little bit, joy, feel happy or whatever, this idea that, and then there was always some kid that would try to take it a little further or whatever. But for me, I was always sitting in the back of my mind wait for it. It's going to end in a second. This little moment of relaxed joy in the class is going to end any minute. I'm very conscious this thing's going to end very soon. Definitely that's the thing in my life. I'm very conscious of the finite nature of time and anything and any experience. And I think that's also a good thing, in a sense that in real terms, that is the case. From a spiritual point of view, I guess one has to have a degree of detachment. From a, let's say, Buddhist point of view or whatever, this idea of detachment is quite important. Not that I'm a Buddhist or anything, but I'm influenced by that philosophy. And I think that sense of detachment. But of course, the problem with that also is that if you have detachment, it means you might not appreciate the moment. So I guess the compromise would be, oh yes, this moment is going to end, but so while I'm in it, appreciate it. And that could apply to a relationship. Yes, it will. It's going to end. Someone's going to die. You're going to fall apart. Even if you live the rest of your lives together, it's going to end, right? But there's one sit there waiting for 50 years by not doing anything and let it end? Or does that one say, okay, fine, I'm going to embrace it, get in there and enjoy the moments I'm having? I think it's a good and bad thing, the detachment. One, it's hard to commit, but two, it's fair and philosophically sound to cultivate a certain degree of stoic detachment. I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily, but it can be. The other good thing about being sent home is that I wasn't black to begin with. I became conscious of my being and self in a place where everyone was black, and I was able to be Robert, not the black kid or the Negro or whatever they want to call you, the WOG, as I discovered when I came back. And in that respect, also teachers' expectations were sound. They had the high expectations of you. That's not white teachers or English teachers would not have done, but they're guaranteed in Barbados they had high expectations of me. And in the community generally, so in church, whatever, I know that people, when they came here, expected to go to church. And, Christians, of course, I can go to church. I'm an Anglican in my country. I can come to an Anglican church. It's all the same, right? But there's always isms there. But in our church, which was Seventh-day Adventist, it was, I was able to do my recitations and I was able to be a part of that without any sense that, oh, we don't want the black kid, or I don't know, whatever prejudice is or whatever. Or wasn't that my parents or my grandma was scared to go to church for rejection or whatever. You could be more embraced in the community. You could be a part of the community. You can play a part in the community. And it was with high expectations had of you. I think that was probably the benefit of being sent black to Barbados. So a Jamaican, very dear beloved friend of mine said, I don't speak black because of my accent, which was formed in Barbados, East London and the University of Bristol, and it's landed in this place, somewhere I've landed. And she said I don't speak black. She's Jamaican, mind. So this piece came as a result. You say I don't speak black. I say no fact. That's just your spin. Because I know for sure, to name one, but there's more, black Bajans talk more sore. True, it's not hard to understand, yeah? People from Jamaica, because you've been bending all our ears for years. But hold up and pull up before you drop that chap don't speak black and reflect that. Yours is just a yardie spin on this Afro-Euro-Asian thing.